We're good to go. All righty, everybody. It is 1 p.m. on March 5th. Sorry, Gary. I woke Gary up. Sorry. At any rate, it's March the 5th, 2024. So I'm calling to order the Landmark Preservation Commission meeting at 1 o'clock. The way we normally start our meetings is to introduce ourselves, commissioners. My name is Julie Johnson. I am a Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. Graham, do you want to start, please?
Sure. I'm Graham Johnson, also a Preservation Project Manager, nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Hi, I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm also an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Hi, I'm George Dennis, retired law enforcement nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant nominated by the community at large.
And I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Before we go any further, for those of you who are joining us virtually, I will read off some audio tips for you all to make it a little easier for you. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. You can click audio settings on Zoom to bring up the additional menu. Add a background noise suppression, which is really helpful. Test your speaker and microphone. Adjust their maximum output volumes. 2, for presenters or those of you who wish to make a public comment virtually, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. You can select your speaker and microphone devices. Test your microphone and speakers, adjust their maximum output volumes. And if you still have audio challenges, you can switch your phone for audio. The first thing that we have for us commissioners is the meeting records for approval. It's February 20, 2024. Any comments, any additions, corrections? I don't see any. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the meeting record for February 20th.
Graham, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, they are accepted as presented. Thank you, staff. All right, we are on to the public comment period. This is a period of time that we reserve at the beginning of every meeting for members of the public to have up to 2 minutes each for comments about historic preservation in general in the city of Denver, not to include comments associated with any of the specific projects that we have coming up for review later. To speak, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom. You can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if joining by phone, or email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having any difficulty with either the hand raise option or the keypad on your phone. Anybody here wish to make a general public comment? Doesn't look like it. Anybody virtually in virtual land? No. Okay, great. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. These are routine design review items recommended for the commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with their landmark preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for consent agenda items. First thing, I will announce the consent agenda by address. I'll ask the commissioners if there are any ex parte or if they have any desire to remove any items from the consent agenda first. Then ask about ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest, and then the commission will make a motion and vote. All right, commissioners, first of all, did you have any questions? We only have one today. It's 2023-COA-606 at 1111 East 6th Avenue and East 7th Avenue District. Anybody have any questions, any concerns, want to pull it off? No? All right, then do I hear a motion to approve said consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda item.
Erica, thank you. Second?
Second.
I'll give it to Gary. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, consent agenda as presented has been approved. Thank you, staff. And then also, if you're joining us on virtually the consent agenda, you are welcome to hang on with us and hear the rest of the meeting, but you do not have to. Just make sure you get back in touch with Bridget. All right, next is a public hearing. And slide up to this. Sorry, that's
I'm
okay.
not sharing the screen the right way. It's not the right one, sorry.
Oh,
It's being difficult.
there you go. Well done. Thank you. All right. This is a public hearing process. I will announce the public hearing agenda by address. Commission members will announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation. Commissioners can question staff. The applicant presentation is limited to 10 minutes and commissioners may question the applicant. The public comment period for this process is 3 minutes per person. If you would like to speak regarding a specific project and you are not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling via phone, dial *9, raise your hand. If you're having difficulty with either the hand raise option, or just email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and photo number. And all of you here, if you wish to, anybody wish to make a public comment, just raise your hand. You'll take your turn, and when you give your comment, you can come up here. And then we will time your 3 minutes, so you don't have to worry about going over. Alrighty, staff will clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate and the commission will make a motion and vote. All right, Kara is our staff person today. Can you say you open the public? Oh, okay. I am officially now opening said public hearing for University Park Historic District. Kara, take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Hahn. I'm the Landmark Planning and Regulatory Supervisor, and we are here for the University Park Historic District. And at the public hearing, we are going to talk about historic districts in Denver, University Park themes for the neighborhood, the designation criteria that you all will be reviewing, and then public comment and outreach. So let's start with talking about historic districts in Denver. We were established in 1967 through an ordinance by Denver City Council for the purposes of designating, preserving, and protecting our historic resources, fostering civic pride, and promoting good urban design. Since that time, we have designated 362 individual landmarks and 59 historic districts, as you can see here on the map. The boxes are the individual landmarks, and the small little red dots, those are our boxes are the historic districts, sorry. The small individual dots are our individual landmarks. And in terms of our district composition, they're all primarily residential districts, apart from 5 that are either our commercial or downtown district. We have 3 historic cultural districts, and then we have one other district that is similar to what you're looking at today, one discontiguous thematic district. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. So discontiguous is a term that the National Park Service uses for their National Register listed properties, which simply means properties that are separate and not adjacent to each other. So here are a couple of historic districts that you guys have recently approved. So on the left is the La Alma Lincoln Park Historic Cultural District. And then on the right is the East 7th Avenue Historic District Steel Street Extension. And so for the most part, these are all similar, like blocks and like development patterns, blocks right next to each other, typically both faces of a block. For the case on the Steel Street, it went right down the middle initially for the East 7th Avenue, and this added the Steel Street on the right-hand side. So these are the types of districts that you guys typically see. But we do have another type of historic district, which is our discontiguous districts. So I wanted to have 2 maps here for you guys to compare. On the left is the River Drive that was designated a few years ago. It's 1 block, both faces of the street. And then here is an example on the right of the downtown district. And the district is composed of each legal parcel and the legal description for each parcel, but they're separated. And then you can see here that the orange boxes are the historic district, and then the little red dot shows that a few of those are also individual landmarks because they are significant enough to be both. So we have had the process of doing, our typical districts, which you guys normally see. And then we have the discontiguous district, which is the downtown district. And this, moving forward here, would be the second district if it goes forward. So what is a discontiguous or a thematic district? For those of you who are familiar with National Register, MPDFs, multiple property documentation forms, and their associated properties, it's a similar theme to that, in that it is for a defined geographic area. There are historic themes that the properties are all related to, and it's over a defined chronological time period or a period of significance. So a historic district still meets all of our requirements. It's just, they're not right next to each other, so they're discontiguous, but they are all united under one theme or one area of significance. And like all of our districts, most historic designations are community driven. They come from members of the community. In this case, the members of the University Park neighborhood started 5 years ago or so. I don't know, COVID interrupted in that time period. And they got an action grant from Historic Denver to study the history of their neighborhood. They didn't know necessarily what they wanted to do, but they got an action grant. They matched it with the R&O funding, matched the grant, and they came up with what they call the history book, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but just a history of the neighborhood. And then from that, they decided that they wanted to move forward with a historic district. And then given the history that we're going to talk about a little bit with this neighborhood, and then the rapid rate of development that they were losing some historic properties, a discontiguous district is the one that best fit this particular property. So the neighbors have been working on this for several years, and they have been working and keeping Councilman Cashman apprised of the situation. And he came forward to be the formal applicant for the designation application. So here's sort of the process of what it is to be a process for a Denver landmark. Starts with a pre-application meeting with landmark staff, and then the bulk of the time is spent here in this community outreach, research, preparing and submitting an application. Square Moon Consultants, which is Jim Steely and Barbara Stockland Steely, they are the consultants. They worked on the initial history and historic context, and then also worked here on this historic district application. And so the bulk of the time is spent doing research, preparing, submitting, and then a lot of community meetings and conversations with members of the community. We as staff are involved in some of those. We have conversations. If people had questions, the neighborhood would say, hey, you can feel free to give Kara a call. And I've had multiple conversations with people who were part of the neighborhood. And so that brings us here today to the Landmark Preservation Commission review. The Landmark Preservation Commission reviews it based on the landmark designation criteria. They have pretty narrow, you guys have a pretty narrow purview. And then tomorrow, if you guys recommend approval, it will go to the Denver Planning Board. They even have a narrower view of what they look at. So theirs is a little narrower. And then finally, it would go on to City Council review, and they have a very wide purview. They can take into account other things beyond just designation criteria that's listed in the ordinance, which is your purview today. If a property is designated, it would go through design review. So if this district is designated, there would be design review for any changes that are proposed to the property. However, the properties are designated as is. There's no requirements to improve it. There's no requirements to restore it to a particular time period. There are a set of design guidelines that are intended to preserve the historic character of the property and just provide clear regulations for the applicants, the owners, and the commissioners and landmark staff. And once something is designated, demolition is highly discouraged and requires commission review for properties that are contributing. Sorry, I went too far.
Do you need my help?
the little things have gone away.
I got you.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you. So what does landmark review? So we review anything that is on the exterior of the building that requires a building or zoning permit. So that would be additions, garages. In this case, ADUs it's not currently designed for, zoned for ADUs in all the areas, but if an ADU was built, if there's fences and retaining walls, anything that it requires a permit on the exterior. What we don't review any interior alterations. We don't review things like paint color. We don't review general maintenance, repair, maintenance, that kind of thing. We don't review. We don't review storm windows or any vegetation, so no trees or plantings, and we don't review anything below grade. So, as we've discussed a little bit about the process of designation, let's talk a little bit about University Park neighborhood and the themes related to this particular historic district. So the University Park neighborhood designation application is based on the historic context that was developed by the consultants. As it's stated here, a utopian Methodist suburb on the southern plains of Denver. And the University Park, in addition to the primary theme, has a few subcategories. And so every property has to be really related to the particular theme, which is the development of the neighborhood and its relationship to DU. And every property then has to meet at least some of the categories. So either the initial founders and supporters, voters, educators, and women related to DU. Its strong Methodist influences. And then there's progressive architecture that we'll talk a little bit about later. But just because a building was built during the period of significance and is cool architecture doesn't mean that it was included. It has to relate to the unique theme that's related to the development of DU in association with the University Park neighborhood. So just because it's a great looking building that happened to be built at the same time, it was not included in the designation application. And additionally, there were a variety of properties that were related to the theme, but they lacked integrity. There were too many changes to it. And so those buildings were not included either. So when you're looking at this discontiguous district, there's some properties that have been lost over time, some that no longer retain integrity, and then the properties that are included here. And I wanted to kind of start it out with this particular picture to help talk about why it's a discontiguous district. So this was taken in about 1895, and the period of significance starts in 1886. So you can really see there was a lot of sporadic development over time, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just thought this picture was a good way to start out to show why this is a discontiguous district, and it's not one of the typical districts we see where someone just comes and develops an entire block of bungalows. And then that is reflected in the map for the historic district. So for this particular district, the legal description will be the legal description of every parcel here in red. If you see a handful of the blue parcels, those are already individual landmarks and are now also would be part of this historic district, which is similar to what we saw with the downtown district. And then the applicants came forward with this particular set of boundaries, and all of the legal descriptions were sent to our city surveyor. So very, very thankful for Ralph Pettit, who went and verified every single one and made sure they were accurate. So we have an accurate legal description moving forward. Okay, so once we've discussed sort of the process, what it means to be a landmark, let's talk a little bit about the designation criteria. So you as commissioners know, but for anyone in our community, in order to be a Denver landmark, a property needs to maintain its integrity, be more than 30 years of age or be of exceptional importance, needs to meet at least 3 out of 10 criteria, and then the Landmark Preservation Commission, you guys consider the historic context for the proposed district. In this particular case, for the University Park Historic District, The application puts forward and staff agrees that it meets 4 out of 10 criteria. It's required to meet at least 3, and these 4 are highlighted here, A, B, C, and F, and we will go through each of those for you. So starting with criterion A, the property or the district has direct association with the historical development of the city. So in this case, it's very keenly linked with the development of this part of Denver. So DU had been located in downtown Denver, and some prominent Methodist leaders, and Elizabeth Warren, which we'll talk about a little bit further, is probably the strongest force here, proposed that their Methodist university should not be in the mix of downtown Denver and all the ills and evils that lived in downtown Denver. So they should move to what they called the Hilltop, which is about 6 miles south of downtown Denver, which in the 1880s was quite a ways away. And it was donated by Rufus Clark. And so you can see over here on the right, he donated land for the campus, which is about 80 acres. And then he donated other land, and the university didn't really have a lot of money. And so they were using this as a way to help support themselves. So they subdivided, and you can see down below at the map, they subdivided it, and then they started selling off lots and blocks to primarily their supporters as a way to support the university. And then if you can see here in red, that is Observatory Park, and it initially was planned for the southern block to be part of, to just be subdivided for housing, but it ended up all of it turning into Observatory Park. And so basically prominent Methodist leaders, as a way to help support the university that they may move 6 miles south of Denver, they purchased lots as support, and they created the University Park neighborhood. So they would purchase a variety of lots and build their house there, and then try to sell the other lots, or it was put on multiple lots, and they used it for gardens and small farm animals. But that didn't start right away because it lacked water, trees, and transportation. And as you can see from this picture, which is about, I think 1895-ish. There are a few small trees that are struggling to grow. They've been there about a decade or so. And that there's a lot of just sporadic growth where you can see you're taking a picture from one lawn and looking out, and you can see a couple of other buildings out in the background, and it shows a little bit of the sporadic growth. But these leaders felt so strongly about moving DU, and they had such strong support for the university that they came to live in a place where there wasn't water and there weren't trees, and it was a long ways back into town. But this was how strongly they felt that it should be supported by moving to the University Park neighborhood. And there wasn't enough housing, so oftentimes the leaders or the Methodists who moved there housed boarders with them. So sometimes it was students and sometimes it was professors. So you had these very large buildings, a couple story buildings on very large lots, and then you use the garden and the animals as ways to help survive. And in addition, as DU was struggling financially, when they couldn't afford to pay their professors, they would provide a building instead. And so here's your house. We can't pay you, but here is a very lovely house for you. And this one here is an example of Professor Russell. You have the historic photo and the current photo that was taken by the consultants of that particular property. When DU wasn't quite struggling as much with its finances, they did hire some landscape architects to design both parts of the university itself as well as 3 parks. But in the end, they only constructed Observatory Park. So there were 3 parks that were planned for their neighborhood that they were selling off, but they only ended up building one, which is Observatory Park. And we'll talk a little bit more about the shape of Observatory Park. As you notice, the north half is a standard block, and then the southern half is slightly larger, making the lots and blocks on either side of it a little bit smaller. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also wanted to note on this map that you see the areas that could still be sold. You see in these more like hatched areas, darker areas, are lots and blocks that have been sold. And then this is taken from about 1907, I believe is the map. Is that you can see the individual buildings as they've been sort of spread out, the little dark buildings, and they've been spread out throughout the neighborhood. So you can kind of see what has been purchased. And so DU and its relation, or I guess University Park and its relationship to DU. Oh, thank you, Brittany. That's so much easier for everyone. Their relationship, this was directly related to the development of the city. They brought the city 6 miles south, and so the University Park neighborhood is directly related to the development of the city and the patterns of growth for the city. And then for the second criteria B, which is a direct and substantial association with the recognized persons or groups of persons. The University Park neighborhood is associated with several professors and people involved with the university, as well as one of the things that I think was one of the most interesting things that came out of it, and I think the consultants may be speaking about this later, when they did the initial study, was the number of women who were associated with the neighborhood and with the university. And so within both the staff report and here, I'm going to highlight a few of the people who were associated with it, but there are more that are discussed within the application itself. And the first is Professor Howe and Fanny Howe, his wife. Fanny was the daughter of a prominent Methodist educator and a DU supporter. For her father was a DU supporter as well. Herbert, Dr. Howe, is was a nationally recognized astronomer, and he worked to have the observatories built here. And one of the things that he noted, and as we talked about the size of Observatory Park and that it's a little bit wider than the southern half is a little bit wider than the northern half, it's because he didn't want any vibrations from the horse traffic to knock off the telescopes. And so he wanted it made a little bit wider so that he could make sure that there wouldn't be vibrations around. And yes. And you can see that there's a little boardwalk on this, because that is their house there. There's a little boardwalk that they walked on that would then come up to the observatory. So they were really close. It's this house kind of back in the background that you can see on the top photo is the Howe house. And then the observatory was there. So he is one as a nationally recognized astronomer that is significant and associated with the University Park neighborhood. Another person who is very well recognized and associated with the neighborhood is Henry Bucktel. He was brought in to help solve one of DU's many financial crises and to raise money. He ended up building a house that we're going to see in a little bit later, a Craftsman house, now known as sort of the Bucktel bungalow. He was a Methodist minister, became strongly tied to DU, a really important member of DU as a chancellor. Bucktel Bungalow or Bucktel Boulevard is named after him. And so he was chancellor in 1900. And then in 1906, the Republican Party asked him to run for governor, and he was a Colorado governor in 1906 to 1908. His wife Mary did not want to move anywhere, and so the bungalow became the governor's residence for a couple of years. And then they remained in it until his daughter, I believe also named Mary, but the consultants can verify that for me, gave the bungalow to DU in honor of her parents' legacy. And so those were a couple of men who were associated with the university and who were substantial people who had influence on society. As I said before, there were a number of progressive women who were associated with the proposed historic district. A few of them are noted here. I'd like to highlight both Alberta Bloom Iliff and Louise Iliff. They were related to, there we go. Related to Elizabeth Iliff Warren, as Elizabeth Warren was the primary person who moved this forward. She had been married and to a cattle rancher. He passed away, she inherited the money, and then she is the one who was the primary proponent to move DU to the south. At a point when it was a school and a seminary. The seminary closed, and then in 1910, the Iliff School of Theology reopened, named after Elizabeth Iliff, as well as several of children related to her and their wives. And they were the ones who helped support the Iliff School of Theology, and is the reason that that is in existence today. Elizabeth Warren provided many donations to the school. She was the first female board of trustees. Lisa Iliff also served as board on the board as well. And so there are a variety of people that are noted within the application for being significant, but these are just a highlight of a few of the most important members of the community that resided in University Park neighborhood. And then it also meets criterion C, embodying the distinctive visible characteristics of architectural style or type. And one of the things that was highlighted in one of the themes is that because the neighborhood was adjacent to DU, and you had a lot of professors who moved in from other parts of the country, you had a lot of progressive architecture. They called it architectural laboratory, that you saw new designs earlier than you saw other places throughout the West, or particularly here in Denver. You saw some early examples. This is the bungalow that Chancellor Wachtell resided in, and then as governor resided here. It was one of the very earliest bungalows here in the city. It was noted in 1906 in the Craftsman magazine as being a great example in talking about this particular building, and it led to other craftsman houses being built throughout the University Park neighborhood. And then throughout the neighborhood, you see styles. Queen Anne's, you were seeing kind of the end of those at the start of the historic district. They are a little more reserved than some others. Then you see some Richardsonian Romanesque, Foursquare, bungalows, romantic styles, and modern styles. This here is the Eugene Groves concrete house as a great example of sort of different experimentation of styles. And so throughout the neighborhood, you're seeing styles that are about a decade earlier than the rest of the city. You're seeing Foursquares that are earlier. You're seeing examples of sort of like a Foursquare in the making. It's not quite truly what we see as a Foursquare, but you're seeing these all a little bit earlier in the University Park neighborhood because you have such an influx of people coming from other parts of the country that are bringing new ideas and different ideas. And so the district represents or embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of multiple styles throughout the neighborhood, and it kind of tracks through history just a little bit earlier than everywhere else in Denver. And then finally, the application puts forward that the proposed historic district represents an established and familiar feature of a neighborhood due to its physical characteristics. And this is seen through a couple of different ways. So the settlement pattern that is, sort of sporadically built out in a very remote location led to an extensive lots. You still see some of the extensive lots in the neighborhood. You can see the distinctive architectural styles, varying styles and types. They're typically about 2 stories. There are a few 1.5, but you're seeing primarily 2 stories on large lots. As in comparison to a lot of post-war development that are, if you look in the neighborhoods around it, it's a lot of minimal traditional infill and 1 stories. So these are distinctive in their 2 stories, in their large lots. And you see that in sort of the residential structures. And then you see in the larger scale buildings that are not residential. And this building here on the top was Elizabeth Warren's house in Fitzroy Place. It has now been reused and as housed in school. And I would like to thank the school for letting us have almost all of our community meetings were held there. So thank you very much for allowing us to use that for the community meetings. But you're seeing really large scale buildings grandiose architecture. Many of the non-residential buildings are on corner lots or along busy roads. So you have buildings such as this that are really identifiable. We'll see the church here in a little bit. It's on the corner of University Boulevard. So it's identifiable through its architectural styles and types, and the type of architecture in comparison to what's around, which is either a lot of you see a lot of scrapes and new infill, or you're seeing a lot of like smaller minimal traditional and ranch buildings in the area. And then the ordinance requires not only does a district meet the 3 out of 10 criteria for met in this case, but also that it has integrity. And this is not like structural integrity, but it's historic integrity, which basically is, would a prior resident recognize it today? As you can see here from these examples of like, you know, black and white and then a color, the properties look kind of like what they used to look like. And so here for the University Park neighborhood, it retains its form and characteristics. The buildings retain their form really well. There are not major changes there. And some of the primary characteristics, whether it's the turret or the shingles, these are retained within the buildings. Here's an example of the church, of the historic photo, and then a current photo as a good example of the integrity that's retained throughout the district. And the aspects of integrity, they're in their same location. The feeling, setting, and association is really similar. It's in a neighborhood, obviously a neighborhood that has more info than it did when it was originally started. But the period of significance goes through 1967. And then the design, material, and workmanship is still apparent. And in addition to that, the ordinance requires that you as Landmark Preservation Commission look at the historic context. And so this context is strongly interrelated with the areas of significance, the themes and the categories, as well as the period of significance. It was very extensively and well done. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the historic context itself. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the period of significance, which is 1886 to 1967. So 1886 is the first standing structure that's still there. This is the Clough House on Evans Street. And then the period of significance goes through the death of the Iliffs, Alberta and Louise Iliff. This is Louise Iliff with the delightful ribbon and bow, I think, on her hair. I zoomed in a lot. I thought it was feathers. It's really, I think, a ribbon. So the period of significance extends through the Iliff family. Yes, it is delightful, and I just had to put that photo in there for this, but also because this is Lisa Iliff, and with the period of significance extends through her death as one of the primary and prominent Methodist leaders. And then want to talk a little bit about the public comment and outreach. So as of yesterday at noon, we had received 16 individual letters in support, letters or emails. You may have seen one that I emailed you guys yesterday that had the children who were drawing the pictures, and it's the gardener's cottage associated with the Fitzroy Place. So there's the 16 letters in support. Then we received 3 other letters of support, one from Denver Parks and Recreation from their executive director, Jolyn Clark. You have the University Park Community Council, or the RNO letters of support, the Children's Art School letter of support, which is the one with the delightful drawings in there. And then we did also receive yesterday one letter of opposition from the University of Denver, which was also included. That was mailed to you guys as well. And then we require, per our application, that the applicants do extensive community outreach. In this case, it was very extensive. The community members did multiple visits to all of the properties. When they went, they provided notes, flyers, letters. They also provided what they call the history book, which is the original historic context written by the consultants. And then there were numerous community meetings held over the course of several years. A majority of those were sponsored by the neighborhood. I was invited to some, and then there were a few that were city, it says housed, that is supposed to not be housed, but hosted. I apologize for that. It was city hosted. And those, there were in-person and virtual options for both of those. They met the requirements for extensive outreach. So with that, it is up for the LPC to consider. That the designation, the properties are over 30 years of age. The application puts forward and staff supports that it meets 4 out of the 10 criteria, that the district retains integrity, and that you consider the historic context that was put forward, and then there was your proposed motion. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Wow, Kara, thank you.
Sorry, I know that was long.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Kara? She's pretty thorough, but there might be questions. Anne?
I have a question, and it has to do with the letter from DU. And how, because they're, as I understand it, they're the owner of that particular property. And so I think that we've run into, it almost becomes an owner opposed designation. And I guess I wonder if you have any thoughts on whether or not, and maybe this is not the right time to talk about it, but just how to approach that, or whether it would be possible in our deliberations to make a condition that that property be eliminated.
So you can reduce a property size. So any district, basically, I maybe have done one historic district where there wasn't complete unanimous support. So every district has generally some people who are not in support of it. It's just simply, that's kind of how districts go.
For sure.
So anything that is brought forward to you, you can reduce the size of a boundary. You cannot expand the size of a boundary based on the ordinance. The applicants are the ones who decide, and the neighbors in this case, in consultation with Councilman Cashman, are the ones who decide the boundary to move forward. And so they decided to include it, and I will leave it up to them a little bit to discuss that, but wanting to, I believe, be proactive in hearing that over time there's been discussions of the building being sold and wanting to ensure that the building is protected. And so coming at it proactively rather than reactively if it comes in for demolition. So I believe that's the reason that I would let the applicant speak to that more clearly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No? Okay,
Let me clear up all of my stuff that I've gathered here. I apologize.
great. Thank you so much, Kara.
Applicants, sure.
Thank you so much. All right, the applicants, you know, the routine, probably come up, have a seat, make yourself comfortable. You'll have 10 minutes between the three, or however many there are, so you'll all together have 10 minutes to talk about the application. And at the beginning of the 10 minutes, if you could all just give your name and address for our records, that would be great. And then Brittany will be timing it, so you don't have to worry about
Want to go through names and addresses first?
it. Sure.
I'm Paul Cashman. I represent District 6 on Denver City Council. I live at 1225 South Elm Street in the Virginia Village.
Thank you.
I'm Rosemary Stoffel, and I live at 2275 South Monroe Street, and I am the chair of the Community Preservation Committee for University Park Community Council, which is our RNO. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Stockman Staley. I am with Square Moon Consultants on the project, and I live at 1003 North Emerson in Denver.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll start off again. My name is Paul Cashman, District 6 Denver City Council. I'm honored to be before you today as the formal applicant for the University Park Historic District. Before coming on City Council, I published a community newspaper called Washington Park Profile for about 36 years, and the University Park neighborhood was in that coverage area. And over the years, I accumulated a large collection of historic photos. The very first one of which was not dissimilar to one that was up on the screen, that as best I could identify was taken from what is now come known as Iliff Avenue, maybe a half dozen blocks west of Colorado Boulevard. And it was pointed towards the west. There was one house off to the north, version of a Denver Square. And then straight ahead was the beginning of the University of Denver campus. And the University of Denver and the University Park community have obviously grown up together over the years. DU has done a wonderful job of supporting the neighborhood, and at least to an equal extent, the university the neighborhood has returned in great support of the university. When the U Park team contacted me, asked if I would be interested in joining in as applicant, I thought that was the idea of a non-contiguous district was ingenious. It would provide enough visible memory of the history of the neighborhood to ensure that future generations would clearly know what's come before. I'll throw in a very quick comment on the university's objection to the Buckle Bungalow. I am a huge fan of the University of Denver. And I think the importance of a connection with that university in this district is critical. And I think this particular property being residentially zoned in a residential neighborhood is as small an impact as this group could ask of the university, and would point out that the lower downtown historic district had widespread opposition as far as owner opposition. Besides that, I would just say that the structures being put forward are remarkable in their architecture for who lived there, and I think they all clearly meet the requirement that they be relevant to the history of the community. I want to just state my appreciation to Denver Parks and Recreation for that agency's willingness to put forward Observatory Park with the 1880s Chamberlain Observatory as part of this district. So thank you again. I look forward to consideration of this district.
So I'd like to go next. So I'm going to go back to why we started this project in the first place, and then walk you through the process over the 5 years that it has taken us to get this done. So this application represents our efforts, which started in 2018, when we were seeing more and more of our older buildings being lost. Many of us, excuse me, had moved to University Park because we were drawn by, in preservation terms that you all know, a unique sense of place. Our older homes, our mature trees, and the green park in the center of our neighborhood all contribute to that feeling. Importantly, our older homes tell stories about our past, which are lost when they disappear. In 1974, Don Etter wrote this book, University Park, 4 walking tours, which included properties built between 1886 and 1910. He called it an introduction to our neighborhood's cultural heritage. Now, nearly 20% of the properties included in this book have been demolished. By 2018, a tipping point seemed to be reached with the loss of 2 particularly notable properties, both posted by the city as potentially eligible for designation. An intact Queen Anne house and a 1907 bungalow used as a boarding house for women at a time when it wasn't acceptable for single women to live alone. We formed the Community Preservation Committee and applied for action funds from Historic Denver, which they graciously approved. Neighborhood residents, within about 3 days, provided over $2,000 in the matching funds for the $9,000 project. What we wanted to do was have a professionally researched history, finally, of our neighborhood. And we wanted to determine which of our properties were the very most historically and architecturally significant. So we hired Square Moon preservation consultants, Barbara and Jim Steely, who have guided us through this entire process. Their research resulted in formally called University Park Utopian Colony and Suburb on the Denver Plains, which we put into a spiral form, with separators, and we've been selling it in the neighborhood for $45 each, and we've sold over 200 copies of this. It's a hot seller. Next, together with the Steelys, we looked at which properties could meet the criteria for designation. Since University Park developed over such a long period of time, there were important properties scattered throughout the neighborhood. Instead of a traditional contiguous historic district, it seemed logical to take a different approach. The result is this thematic historic district application, which tells the story of our neighborhood from its earliest years to 1967. Each property represents a chapter in the story of University Park as a college town within a city. And there are some buildings included in this application that are really pivotal in the success of telling our story. One is the Howe House, the astronomer Herbert Howe, Fitzroy Place with Elizabeth Iliff Warren, and probably at the top is Bucktail Bungalow, which is pivotal. This building is one of the most important in this application for the reasons that some of you have heard already. As far as our outreach, we kept the neighborhood informed about the project throughout the entire time. As you can see, if you've read the attachment of our outreach, we started our contact with individual owners by delivering handwritten note cards, simply thanking them for being good stewards. So we had these note cards. Historic Denver did a historic tour of University Park, and Barbara Frola drew this, and we sent a copy of each of these to the owners, just saying, thank you so much. You own a really important house, and thank you for taking care of your house. Then COVID happened. We were kind of stalled out there for a couple of years. After COVID, we started meeting with owners one-on-one. We gave them each a copy of the book, the inventory form telling them about the history of their own house, and information on tax credits and what designation means. In many cases, we talked with property owners multiple times. All the owners were invited to 8 public meetings. We simply want to protect the places that make our neighborhood special. We have a rich historic legacy in this application. With this application, we've done our best to help protect what remains. And now I'd like to let Barbara Steely explain a little bit more.
Very quickly.
about the thematic district.
Well, Kara did such a great, thorough job, and I only have less than a minute, but
Sorry.
no, it's good. You guys are great. I guess the only thing to say about the discontiguous district, when we did the study and we identified the significant properties, you try to see if there was a contiguous historic district, and there really just wasn't. And we could find one, but then it wouldn't include many of the most significant properties in the neighborhood. So Barb Paul, who's here, will speak. She talked a lot about, hey, could we do a discontiguous district? The ordinance didn't prevent it. And it just seemed, we actually recommended it in 2020 in our history, because it just seemed kind of like the logical approach for this neighborhood. So it was a logical, well thought out strategy of why we came forward with the discontiguous district. So I have other things I could say, but I think about that.
Great, thank you very much. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants?
I have 2 questions. One is more directly related to the application, and one is just out of curiosity. So I just wanted to verify, Karis kind of summarized it. You discussed it in the application as far as discussing some properties that are related to the historic themes, but no longer have integrity and therefore are not included in this district. So the 2 kind of main criteria, if you will, of inclusion in the district were they related to the historic themes and had integrity. Is that correct? That those were the considerations, and that those that did not meet it were not included, but all that did were. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just wanted to verify that. And then this is totally out of curiosity, given the theme of progressive women, I know that there was a South Denver suffrage league at the time of the women's suffrage campaign in 1893, which is right in this historic period. And I was just curious if you saw any reference to that and related to any of the women that you discuss.
Well, unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren Iliff, as progressive as she was opposed to women's suffrage.
Yeah.
So I think that if there were women in the neighborhood that were supporting that, she kind of was a big presence.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't really a record of that. There were a lot of progressive women there kind of later, and they were progressive in their own way by owning properties and things like that.
Yeah.
But not the suffrage. We didn't see that.
Okay, great.
Great question. Commissioners, other questions for the applicants? Great. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to our public comment portion of our meeting. Slide. All right, I think what we'll do first is all of you who are here in person, you'll get a chance to speak. You'll have 3 minutes and you can come up here. And just like with the applicant, we keep track of the time, so y'all don't have to worry about that. And then when everybody here in person is done, from everybody, then we'll go to those of you who are joining us virtually. And so if you're joining us virtually, if you're on Zoom, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom, or you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone, and then email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having any difficulty with Zoom or with the hand raise button. And you will also be given 3 minutes to provide your comment. So let us begin. Who wants to go first? Barb. Of course.
Thank you all. It's been a long time coming to this moment.
So for our records, your name and address, please. Thank you.
My name is Barb Paul, and my husband and I, Bob and I, own 2111 South Fillmore, and we are among the properties that would be landmarked to get through this process. I have to begin by saying we've lived in our house for 15 years, and for 15 years, my husband had asked for his birthday, could he please have a landmark sign on the house? So April 13th is coming up, and if we're lucky, this will be his lucky year, and we'll be able to grant his birthday wish. I've been working with Rosemary over the course of this, working with the consultants on the report and talking to the neighbors. I'm the one who had the experience with the downtown historic district, which of course was our non-contiguous district for the same reasons. It made sense for that, and it was actually the city attorney who came up with the idea that the boundary could be the individual boundaries of individual properties. So I thought, well, worked in downtown, and you already saw the pictures why we thought it would be appropriate for this district, and I think in fact it is. And perhaps over time we can add to it, as we probably should have with the downtown historic district. Lost a few that we shouldn't have. But I also, if I can, want to speak a little bit to the Bucktail Bungalow, because I think you've already heard from everybody who's spoken so far that it's sort of a pivotal property within our district, and it absolutely connects the tie. Our house was built by DU, but Henry Bucktail was the chancellor. He was the governor. It was the governor's mansion. Henry Bucktail was like the Dan Ritchie of his day. He came into that campus. He helped totally modernize it, build a lot of buildings. Guess what? They're all gone. So the only one that really remains associated with Henry's tenure is the house that he built in 1904. It's the house that his daughter and his wife, who was still alive, gave to the $1. I think it was $10 that they sold it to DU for. And at the time, and it's written down, she said, because we thought if DU had it, they wouldn't tear it down. And now it's potentially going to be up for sale, and that's the very reason why we think it would be better to have someone buy it knowing that it's landmarked and knowing it couldn't be torn down than having that lovely experience you just talked about, where we might have to come before council and petition to have it landmarked at that point. Plus, I should tell you, and I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to. There's a bill going through the legislature right now that might actually modernize our historic tax credit for residential use, take the $50,000, move it to $100,000 in terms of the amount of credit that you could declare, and it would be refundable. So it would actually make it a bona fide credit that might even help DU find somebody who would buy the property and have that added financial advantage to make some of the repairs that I'm sure the house will be. So I personally think it'll benefit their chances of selling it than when they tried before in 2004 and were not able to sell the property. And yet it would still allow us to have that physical important connection to the university and to Chancellor Bucktel and to his wife and daughter who kindly thought they were protecting the property. When they have, DU's been a wonderful steward of it. We just want to make sure it continues. So thank you again. Glad to finally be here, and we hope that we'll get your support for this landmark designation.
Can we get your address, Barb?
Yeah, it's in your papers. It's 2111 South Fillmore.
Thank you. All right, next. And everybody who wants to speak? Nobody else? Say something?
My wife hates it when I say things. I'm Rob Paul. I live at 2111 South Fillmore Street. And other than the opposition of DU, there's 100% participation in the acceptance and the desire for this district. My father told me once, and we've experienced this over the years, that once you lose something, it's very, very hard to get it back. And we've been losing properties over the last 25, 30 years, and they're not coming back. And we're just trying to save what remains. They're all very important. They're all reflective of our history, and they're all treasured deeply by the people that live in those houses. And they're counting on you to support them in their desire to maintain their houses and preserve the history of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hi, John Beffenbaugh, Historic Denver at 1420 Alton Street. Be very quick, very little to say, other than we are just so hugely supportive of this effort. We're incredibly grateful that the small amount of funding we provided has played a role in getting to this point, and it really has been such a wonderful community-led effort. It's sad that DU has chosen not to participate in this community-led effort, given how inextricably linked the institution is to its community. We're very in favor of including that building in this designation. So we are very supportive, we are very grateful to the community for bringing this forward, and just think this is such a wonderful piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Alrighty, anyone in the virtual community that wishes to give a now's a good time to use that hand raise function on your Zoom. If you wish to speak. No, nobody?
Or if you're having difficulty, you can email us at landmark@denvergov.org.
Currently, nobody's in there either.
Nobody's there? Okay.
I think it's safe to.
Alrighty, okay, terrific. Thank you. Then I will close the public hearing. And Kara, did you have any other staff comments? Any redirect or anything?
I know, I just had a couple of comments. One that I meant to say earlier, Stacy West from Parks is here in case anyone has any questions, and we've been working with Parks in terms of usage of the park, that it would continue. Very similar to like La Alma or La Raza Park, that we hope that it continues to be used as a park. There's one contributing feature and then the two observatories that are already listed, but that the rest, we just want the park to continue to be a park. It's noted in the inventory forms that is put in there as an intent for it, but Stacy is here to answer any questions. And that, yes, wanted to clarify that for all of the properties that are there, support except for DU. There are other properties that if anyone would like to amend and come forward, that is also an option as this goes, similar to Curtis Park, as you could amend, that could happen as well.
So I have a question for Stacy. If this district gets approved by us and passed by council, what kinds of changes in the park might come before this commission in the future? I'm not talking about specifics, but what sorts of changes? I mean, anything that changes, or only related to
No.
structures?
Yeah, only related to structure. So if there was a, and we don't manage the observatory itself, so if there was a change to that, that would come before design review. But otherwise, the way these are written and the way Landmark does their design review, we're able to continue to maintain the park, to change features or make repairs as needed without having to come for review.
So I actually have a question for you, Kara. Should the commissioners decide to remove the Bucktel House from this particular application, should we forward it to city council? Would it be possible, do you sell it to an owner that would be interested in adding it to the district? Is that a possibility to do in the future?
Yes, that is a possibility in the future.
Okay, all right, thanks. Any other questions for Kara or for Stacy? And thanks for being here, Stacy. Okay, no more questions, then let us all go into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts? I know you have, Mary.
I have no interest in excluding the Bucktel building. I think the applicants made the case for its inclusion. And even by itself, it's an important structure.
Oh, yeah.
A district or no structure, no district. So I, kind of understand DU's objection, but I don't think it's strong enough to warrant our consideration.
I guess my concern was when city council approved it.
Exactly, that's why I asked the question.
Um,
So the reason why I asked the
Okay.
question I did was, I mean, to help establish, like, there was a methodology behind this, right? Of why all of these particular buildings were included. And it did not hinge on owner support or lack of owner support. And I know that that's not what city council has to take into consideration. But that is, our purview is that it's, relating to these criteria and it has integrity. And that's what we have before us. And just by virtue of that, I don't see how we could say that it's appropriate to remove the Bucktel. So I think, and of course, it's a National Register listed property
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
that has no protections for it,
Yeah,
which would be
exactly.
extremely sad to see that go away. And also just reiterating, which I think, I know Anne, in the past, you've been very good about reminding applicants or owner objectors that design review does not mean that there are no changes available or allowed.
Right.
And that this really, by having this building as part of the district, it's giving clarity to future owners about the importance of this building. Otherwise, it becomes another argument for the future that could be very protracted. And
Right.
so
Yeah, I'm just
for
putting
all
forward
of those,
fabricated
yeah,
sense.
for all
Just
of
so
those
y'all know.
reasons.
So the commission should consider whether or not the structure meets the designation criteria.
Right.
And if not, make a decision based on that. City council can always amend the boundary to exclude the property based on lack of owner support.
But that was exactly why I asked the question I had the same concern that you did. I didn't want to see the whole application fail just because of this one. So,
But
yeah,
I think,
but I
yeah,
think
you
you're
guys have clarified that, so, yeah, thank you for that, I appreciate that, I'm just playing the devil's advocate, I went to DU, so. This is twice, the first one didn't take, I had to go twice. So at any rate, anybody else, any other thoughts?
I guess on the topic of that Bucktel bungalow, I would say that the applicants have presented a really great argument for its inclusion and being an incredibly early example of that style and it being so connected to the university. So I would definitely support including.
I actually was thinking a lot about how changes to those properties will be assessed because I think I said criterion C, which is sort of which has to do with being a great example of whatever they are. This is like the eclectic, the eclectic time period, just because of the time period. And I guess I was thinking a lot, and this is not, it's just a comment about how each of these structures, when it comes back and it happens, is really sort of have to be looked at on its own, because it's really sort of not part of it's such a widely varying grouping of architectural styles, which I think is interesting. That's just a comment about nothing, but I kept thinking about criterion C.
Any other thoughts, commissioners?
You can tell this has been a passion project.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
neighborhood, and, you know, however city council treats the Bucktown House, I think that says a lot. And I think that it clearly meets the criteria. It's a really well done district, so I'm in full support.
All righty, well done, commissioners. Without further ado, do I hear a motion?
I'd like to.
Erica? Absolutely.
Let me pull up the actual language.
Script.
Okay, thank you. I move to recommend approval and forward to City Council the landmark designation of the University Park Historic District, application number 2024 L-002, based on the landmark ordinance criteria A, B, C, and F, citing as findings of fact for this recommendation, the application form, public testimony, and the February 27th staff report.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Graham. I think he beat you, Gary. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, it passes unanimously. Good luck. Yes, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a lot of work. Obviously, labor is very, and the DU alum here is really happy. All right, we are moving now to design review projects. We have two. The first one is 2023. Well, I would read that.
I just think that he will go so he doesn't make fun of it.
All right, so design review project number 1 is 2023-COA-610 at 3478 West 30th Avenue in the Allen M. Ghost District. And I understand that we have. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So the chair will announce design review items on the agenda in order of address. So commission members will have to announce the ex parte contracts or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation. Commissioners can question the staff. The applicant will have 10 minutes to make his presentation. Commissioners may question the applicant. Public comment period for the design review process is 2 minutes per person. And again, if you would like to speak regarding a specific project and you are not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button if you're on Zoom. For those calling via phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. If you are having difficulty with either hand raise option, email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number. Staff can clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate and the commission will make a motion and vote. Okay, so it is 2023-COA-610 at 3478 West 30th Avenue in the Allen M. Ghost District.
And yes, I have a conflict of interest in that.
Yes,
I'm the
yes, you
applicant,
have,
so I
actually.
will excuse myself. Hot seat.
And you don't have to leave the.
You don't have to leave,
Yeah.
since you're also the applicant. Well, I guess staff already has a seat, doesn't she? All right.
Yes, I should turn
Okay,
my
great.
camera on though.
Yeah. Staff will give her report first and then we'll fix that.
So our first application for the day for design review is for an accessory dwelling unit at 3478 West 30th Avenue in the Allen M. Ghost Historic District. This structure was built in 1941 and the period of significance is prior to and including 1941. So it just made it in. It is a Norman style cottage, 1.5 story with a steeply pitched roof. It's not quite a mid-block property. It's one in from the corner, but essentially mid-block. As you can see here in this aerial image. To accommodate the accessory dwelling unit, an existing garage will be demolished, but is not considered contributing to the district and may be demolished with the improvement of a replacement plan. And the replacement plan here is again a accessory dwelling unit that is 2 stories in height. So the ground floor will be used for garage space, and then the second floor is habitable living space. This is a cross gable form, and that is replicating the roof form of the primary structure. It does look like a side gable in the images of the structure, but it is much more complex when you look at it in the aerial view. The applicant did redesign the roof form to better fit with the pitch and profile of the existing structure based on staff recommendation. And then there is also a rear deck along the alley, which are now allowed per the Denver zoning code. So you can see that access there. So the accessory dwelling unit will be clad primarily in fiber cement lap siding, and then the roof will be clad in an asphalt shingle with a standing seam over the entry features on the north elevation that is not visible from the public right of way. As you can see in the north elevation, the structure does pierce the bulk plane and is also over height slightly. Again, this was a result of redesigning the roof to better fit in with the pitch and profile of the existing structure's roof based on staff's recommendation for this ADU. The prior design was totally within the height and bulk plane, and staff didn't find that the roof form was compatible with the primary structure and did suggest a revision to the roof form. So we are supportive of the administrative adjustment, as we do find that designing to comply with the Denver zoning code would create an accessory structure that does have some incompatibility with the primary structure in terms of roof form. So here is just the west and south alley elevation. We'll have 2 garage roll-up doors. Those are steel roll-up doors. The door 1 on your screen is the larger door, but the smaller door is similar in design with lights above. The roof form will have skylights on most slopes to allow some light into the space. And here you can see the proposed light fixture, and then the railing is shown here. I'm covering it up on my screen with myself, so I'm going to move myself. But it will have a composite decking material and then a steel tube railing detail that is horizontally oriented with French doors that allow access onto that space. These doors here are full light doors. The doors on the north elevation are half light doors with a solid panel below. Which are the doors you see on your screen here. So in terms of this accessory dwelling unit, staff do feel that it is compatible with the existing primary structure and surrounding historic context, and are recommending approval. We simply put this on the design review agenda, as the applicant is also a commissioner, to maintain transparency. Otherwise, we likely would have had this on the consent agenda. We did refer this to the RNO, but at the time of writing the staff report and this meeting, we did not receive comment officially from the RNO. However, I do know that the applicant did meet with the RNO. So here are just some images showing how that ADU relates to the primary structure. You can see that it is just a bit taller than the existing primary structure, but again, it is a full 2 stories in height, and it's just minimally taller and is significantly set back on the lot. And you can see how those roof forms, oops, sorry, didn't mean to click forward so quickly, have a similar profile as you're looking at them from the street. And then just some isometric views showing that ADU. So again, even though it is a little bit taller than the primary structure, it's not really visible from the public right of way and is subordinate to the primary structure. So staff are supportive of this project proposal.
Great, Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? for staff? Nope. Okay, terrific. Then on to the applicant. The applicant will have 2 minutes to make the presentation, and at the beginning of the presentation, please give your name and address for our records. You can start your video.
I am Larry Sykes. My address is 1057 North Emerson Street, Denver, Colorado. So yeah, I think Brittany really summed it up well. I think the only couple of points that I would add to that, one of the aspects of height to consider is that the lot slopes down toward the rear, roughly about 4 feet lower at the area of the ADU than the primary structure is. So I think that will help with height visibility of that being a sort of 2-story structure. And then, yeah, as far as the R&O meeting, we did meet with West Highland Neighborhood Association on February 5th, and they did not object to the design. They had a few comments, but they put together a letter that was just done after the required date. So yeah. Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm Nick Capello. I live at 3478 West 30th Avenue. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants? No questions, great. You're off the hook. Did you have anything else to say?
Public comment.
Oh,
And we don't, the only person virtual is Jen, so she's probably not.
Oh.
gonna provide public comment. And I know these are our applicants for the next project,
Next
but
project, okay.
it's still public comment.
I still need to talk to you about public comments. So, comments for design review projects. You will have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to provide your comment if you're listening to us or somebody here who wants to make a comment. But if you're joining us virtually, you need to check or click the hand raise button on Zoom. Dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if joining by phone. Email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having any difficulty with either option. All right, anybody here wish to make a comment? Anyone virtually wish to make a comment? I think we're okay. We have no one who wishes to make a comment. Staff, any other additional comments?
I do not have any additional.
All right, commissioners, let us deliberate. What are your thoughts?
How easy are we gonna let Larry off? the hook?
Well, there's a consideration there.
No, I agree with staff's assessment and appreciate the steps taken to
Yeah.
coexist nicely with the house. So I'm in favor of staff's recommendation for approval.
All right, I see a lot of that.
Likewise.
All right, thanks. Do I hear a motion?
Can make the motion.
And thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to approve application 2023-COA-610 for the garage demolition and new accessory dwelling unit at 3478 West 30th Avenue as per design guidelines 4.1, 4.2, 4.5, 4.8, 4.18, 4.20, 5.6, 5.18, character defining features for the Allen M. Ghost Historic District, presented testimonies, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report. I also move to approve the administrative adjustment for height and bulk plane per section 12.4.5.2B for application 2023-COA-610 at 3478 West 30th Avenue as per design guidelines 4.5 and 4.19, character defining features for the Allen M. Ghost Historic District, presented testimonies, submitted documentation, information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Ann. Second?
Second.
Gary has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, congratulations. It has been unanimously approved. All right. Then we have one more on our design review project. It's 2024-COA-114. It's 659 Vine Street on East 7th Avenue District. And our staff person is Brittany.
And Larry is returning to the meeting.
Larry has
Just for
just taken his seat.
clarity. So our final project of the day is for alterations to 659 Vine Street, which is in the East 7th Avenue Historic District. You can see the structure here on your screen. It is a side entrance home, so you don't enter the home along the street fronting facade, which is a open terrace space. So that is currently covered with an awning structure. The applicant is proposing to alter the portico entrance over the primary entry, and then also add a permanent roof structure over the existing terrace space. So this is a mid-block property, as you can see on the aerial image here. Staff do believe that this home has seen some alterations. However, we cannot verify when exactly those alterations took place. And some of that evidence is the fact that the home is stuccoed, which is not typical of structures within Denver, particularly of this style, which is more of a Denver four-square style. And additionally, most side entrance homes and the surrounding context are just natural brick, and you can see some natural brick on this home in terms of the windowsills and foundation lines and details around the chimney. But again, however, it's unclear to us when exactly this home was stuccoed. And then also there are some classical details on this home, such as the portico entry element that is proposed for alteration, and the swag detail that you see on the chimney. Again, we cannot verify when exactly those alterations occurred or if they are contributing. We, as staff and the applicant, did a significant amount of research to verify if the portico entry was original to this home, and it was just difficult to verify those details. So the applicant is proposing to alter the portico entrance. Here you can see the existing patio, which is a brick patio, and the existing footprint of the portico. The applicant would like to expand out the portico in depth to provide a more covered entry to that primary structure, or the primary structure. No change will be made to the patio footprint, so the patio footprint will remain the same. However, the existing portico will be demolished and expanded in depth to provide a more covered entry feature. On the front terrace, which does face onto Vine Street, the applicant is proposing to remove the existing awning canopy and metal posts that support that, and then install a more permanent roof feature along that semicircular footprint that exists today. So this is the existing, and here is the proposed. So you can see that the new portico will be 7 feet in depth, and then the width footprint will not change, and then the new terrace footprint will not change. But with the new roof covering that is more permanent in nature, it will encroach into the front yard setback due to the semicircular nature of the existing terrace footprint. It will be supported by 4 columns, which you can see their footprint here in this this floor plan. The portico design will match the existing in terms of architectural detail, and the front terrace design will match the detailing of this rear entry patio, which was reviewed and approved by the commission, I want to say 10 years ago. I should have had that date handy, but I do not have that handy at the moment. So here is the existing side elevation with the entry portico detail, again, proposed for demolition. There are several images in your packet of this portico detail. Again, that makes me question if this is an original element. There's just some awkward joining details and connection details. But again, I cannot say definitively if it is original or constructed within the period of significance. But generally speaking, staff are supportive of the alterations to the portico entrance. As this is on a side elevation, even though it is the primary entrance into the home. And we just feel that it's likely probably not original to the home. And we don't feel that expanding the depth of the portico is a significant change to this architectural style of the home or detailing of the home. And the existing portico details will be replicated in the reconstructed portico, which you can see here. So again, it's very simple. It just has like very, very minimal detailing on the entablature, but mostly simple in design. In terms of the front terrace detail and more permanent roof cover, the applicant has intentionally kept the column designs much simpler than those of the portico entry feature, and again do match those column designs of this rear patio entrance that was added to the home and reviewed by the commission. It will have a new railing installed, and that railing is required for fall protection, and it is 3 feet in height from the grade of the patio, so that patio is raised a little bit, and you can see that demarcation line in this elevation here. And then again, supported by 4 columns, very, very simple column design, very simple entablature design. However, it does encroach into the front yard setback, as you can see indicated by this line here. Zoning would require this feature to have an entry stair on it. Staff are not supportive of that, and the applicant and homeowners also do not want that entry feature. So they are requesting it to not be included in that design before the zoning review. However, to achieve this cover, the commission will need to grant an administrative adjustment for this detail if you do feel that this is an appropriate alteration due to the encroachment into the front yard setback. Otherwise, it will require review for the Board of Adjustment. There is no other administrative adjustment path that the applicant can seek for this encroachment because it is so significant into the front yard setback. So we are the only administrative adjustment path for that encroachment. Staff are supportive of that administrative adjustment if the commission determines that this detail is appropriate, because we feel that designing the roof covering detail to align with the front yard setback is would be awkward, as you would essentially not be following the footprint of the existing terrace, and to cut straight across that and not follow the natural curvature of that terrace detail would be awkward. And also we would not like to see a stair detail added to this terrace, as it does take away from the prominence of the primary entrance and does make it look more like a porch detail. So here is that terrace detail from the front, and then also you can see that expanded portico, and there will be some new light fixtures added adjacent to the primary entrance. Those are included in your packet and do meet that full cutoff requirement detail. So staff did struggle significantly with this application because this is not a front porch in terms of the terrace, but it is also not an insignificant architectural detail of this home. And additionally, we were very unclear about when alterations were made to the home, which added to level of confusion about how to assess this application. So generally speaking, we as staff are supportive of the portico alterations, but we do have more concerns over the covering of the terrace detail. So we did make a suggested motion, and that suggested motion is approval with conditions, with the condition that the terrace roof cover be eliminated from the project scope. But we do also have an alternative motion for the commission to consider if you do determine that this porch covering detail is appropriate. So again, this is in the East 7th Avenue Historic District, and it is not uncommon for properties within the East 7th Avenue to have side entries with a covered side porch. So you can see several of those images here, and there's more in your packet. I don't know what happened to my slide. This is not how I designed it, but here it is. Additionally, within East 7th Avenue, there also are a number of front porches that have been enclosed and that have occurred in within the periods of significance. So with the, character of East 7th Avenue, we really struggled with assessing this application because again, that front terrace is not an insignificant detail of the home and is right on the street fronting facade, but it's not the primary facade. So we did struggle a lot with this application. So that I will leave it up to you guys to decide.
Okay. All right, any questions for Brittany?
Yeah, just one question. Staff believe that a lot of these examples in this district that have porches where you don't enter right into the porch, either you guys kind of to the side of the porch or the whole side of the house, was that typical originally in these houses or are these later?
A lot of them are original, particularly the side entrance with the side detail. This home, again, it was very hard for me because there is a home right across the street that is a side entrance with an open front terrace. But that home clearly has been not as altered. It doesn't have stucco. It has a lot more architectural detailing to it. Again, like stucco is just really not typical of East 7th Avenue. You can see that even just looking at these images here. I will be honest with you, I had a hard time with this one because of the character of East 7th Avenue. You do have porches that have been modified and enclosed over time, and those are front porches. And this is a side terrace, but it is on the front of the home. So our guidelines do say do not enclose a front porch. So if we had an application that was requesting to enclose a front porch, that's probably not something we would be supportive of today. However, I did have a home at 720 Downing Street, which had a 1980s Pomo porch on it, and the commission did approve that project to restore back to an enclosed porch. So that wasn't exactly the original porch foundation, and they are also encroaching into the setback with that new porch. And the commission did grant that AA there. So just like based on my history with East 7th Avenue, it was a really difficult application. I think in terms of the cover that is designed, it's as minimal as possible, and it is identifiable as not historic because there's very few architectural detailings on it. So if you guys find that it's appropriate, I think the way it's designed is the best possible scenario.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, then it is time for the applicants to give a presentation. You come up here, have a seat. And please begin your 10 minutes with the name and address for our records.
My name is Allison Hagan, and my work address is 130 Vine Street. And I am, along with Ann Qualic here, the architects for the homeowners. Want to introduce yourselves and then I will get started.
Sure, I'm Erin Bruno and part owner of this house.
Jim Bruno, the other room.
Thank you.
I am going to be reading just to keep myself on track with time, or I will go over. Thank you, Brittany, for walking us through. And before I get started, would you mind, Brittany, going to the photo of the front facade? That would be great. We'd like to respond to the very understandable concerns brought up in the staff report, specifically in regards to the front terrace roof. In terms of its history, just as Brittany said, we actually don't know if it's from the time of significance. It and the entry portico are both missing from the Sanborn map. We realize that the Sanborn map is not the end-all be-all in showing exterior features, but in this portion of the map, all of the neighbors to the south actually have their porches dashed in, making this absence all the more confusing for us, calling into question whether or not it is from the original home construction. In terms of its visual impact, one of the concerns outlined in 210 is that it may be a significant change to the ability to understand the original terrace feature, and 3.4 that it may imply a different understanding of the original conception of the space. However, the terrace is already a covered space, as you can see, just not with anything practical for the Denver climate. Moreover, the existing terrace awning is not actually temporary. It has permanent metal posts that are integrated into the terrace wall instead of just being simply affixed. There's also the awning frame. In the winter, this frame is left exposed while the fabric is stored to avoid inclement weather that could damage it, detracting from the traditional aesthetic of the home and neighborhood. In the summer, the awning is up 24/7, excepting hailstorms, blocking the view of the historic details, as you can see, which are above the French doors, which, as you can see, are very well blocked from the street view. You actually have to be seen under the awning in order to see them clearly. A concern brought up in 3.9 is that the proposed change could have a significant impact on the character divide features of the structure. And for this one, Brittany, would you mind going to the east elevations, please? We'd like to point out that the proposed terrace roof has been designed to allow those existing features to now be visible instead of blocked from the street. And while the details are currently blocked by the awning, we are fortunate that the Brunos have selected a tasteful and traditional fabric for the awning framing. This may not always be the case with future owners. In terms of the neighborhood characteristics, as mentioned in 239 and demonstrated by the precedent photos that we've just seen, covered front porches with side entries are a common characteristic of East 7th Avenue Historic District, but not as common are exposed ones and those with awnings, making 659 Vine Street more of an anomaly than the norm. Our intent is to replace the permanent awning structure with a simple roof and column structure that will allow the homeowners full use of the terrace year round instead of just during the warmer months. Allow the home's historic detailing, which is currently blocked most of the year, to be easily visible from the street and be more in keeping with the historic character of the neighborhood. It is true that in doing so, we will be adding visual weight to the front, a concern mentioned in 3.9. However, as mentioned in 239, we are proposing simpler language at the terrace roof than the portico. Furthermore, we propose to extend the entry portico in order to maintain and even enhance the entry features visual prominence from the street. Thank you for your consideration, and I will turn it over to the Brunos.
Really appreciate everything you guys do for the community. As I think Brittany mentioned, we were here 10 years ago for the back, and we gutted that house. I mean, we put in new structure to, I think, keep it going another 100 years.
At least.
We've been really proud to be part of the historic district, and we even have a name for the house. We call it Betty. So we refer to it with a lot of enduringness, a lot of love, because it's been a love hate, but mostly love. And Brittany's been great to work with, so this is incredible what you do. But we wanted to talk a minute about what the front porch means to us. You know, we moved to the city to be in the city, to be close to people, be close to neighbors, not in some larger, community that our houses are so spread apart. And our block all has a really healthy porch lifestyle, I almost call it, where especially in the summer or year round, you get to sit outside, connect with people walking their dogs or just walking by in a real true kind of offline style. And the front porch is super inviting. We'd love to be out there. It's honestly my favorite space in the house. And so I really miss it when we have to take the awning down. And so we're asking just to increase the kind of connectedness we have with our block in the way that we live in the house, and make it kind of similar to the other houses in a certain degree to be able to utilize more frequently.
Awesome. I'll finish up with saying that we have been working on this house for 13 years. We've gone through 3 renovations on the inside. I'm gonna just pat myself on the back here, but it's been, like Jim said, it's been a lot of love and hate being just sometimes the contractors, because as you know, going through these 100-year-old homes, trying to move walls just to make it more 21st century living inside so that our family can, enjoy the space. And I just hope that as I look on the outside, it's our final piece, that we can just, we really want to make it as beautiful on the outside as we've done with all the care and love that we've had on the inside. And we appreciate your consideration for this.
The address is our wedding anniversary too.
Oh, stop it. So sometimes when we're like, no, we're like, nope, we were born June, or we're sorry, we got married June 5th in 2009. So a bit of a significance there, and we didn't realize that until after we were like, let's go back to talking about that house on Vine. We love that house on Vine, and yeah, so there you go.
Close to our hearts.
Yeah,
Great.
so,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicants?
I have one. As it relates to both sort of replacement and additions, the roofs for the entry on the side and the roof for the portico in the front. How do you propose to drain those? Is there a note I'm missing in the drawings or a downspout or a gutter? Is it internal? How is it done?
No, that is an excellent question. And for this, and I apologize, that is actually not on the drawing, so well spotted. For both of them, we would need to drain them. We would recommend that for the entry feature, that we would have a downspout attached to the house on the side furthest away from the street to minimize how well you can see that from the street, to help hide it behind that half column,
Which is the way it is now.
which is the way it is now, exactly.
Kind of assumed it would be the same.
So it'll be an internal drain from a drain in the top of the flat roof.
We would have a scupper coming out on, yes, on the side, exactly. Thank you, Brittany, that is very helpful. We would have a scupper coming out that would go directly to a downspout. That would be flush against that wall and against that half column, minimizing its view and impact.
Got it. And then the front, can somebody help me with that?
The front, that is an excellent question as well. And that's something that us and the homeowners would need to delve into. One option would be to drain it internally and to just have it daylight at the bottom at grade. The other option would be to have a downspout. We would recommend putting the downspout close to the house, but on the north side, so that it is away from the entry and the drive as you approach the home. It's the side of the house that attracts the least amount of view when you're walking by.
It's really actually quite hard to see, especially with the proximity to the neighboring house.
Very good. I do think, just as a note to staff, that that's a very important feature that should be addressed in these applications. It shouldn't be left to guess at in the future.
Any other questions for the applicants? No? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I don't see anybody here who in person who wishes to make a public comment. Do we have anyone in virtual land that would like to? So, you don't think so? We don't have any attendees. Well, then I guess okay, let's move forward then. All right, staff, any other additional comment? Okay, great. All right, commissioners, what are your thoughts on this?
I want to thank staff for dropping such a challenging case on us. That's there's so much that's not verifiable to the structure itself and its finishings. It's hard to have a baseline to work from. I do think the fabric covering of the patio with the terrace qualifies as a temporary sort of thing. And that can be removed without any, like a temporary fence. It can be removed without any consequence. But for me, side entrance houses are totally confusing. And I think the way the plan is presented now makes it more consistently confusing. I would support staff's recommendation that the roof covering and that be omitted from the application so they can move on with the side entrance modifications, but we're gonna need something different on the front. If there are zoning issues with having an entrance to the front or requirements that other permissions be sought, that might be the only way to go. But as far as it goes, I would go with removing the front terrace project from the project so it can move on.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I would argue the opposite of that. Just so long as the roof is drained properly aesthetically in an aesthetically pleasing way. I would be supportive of approving the front roof above the existing base. I don't think it's a big stretch from what's there today. And the profile, the fascia, mirrors what was approved by the commission 10 years ago on the back. So it's a good bookend for the house. And it's one that keeps the room. There's a room there now, outdoor. And the owner should be able to benefit from that.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. Any other thoughts, Larry?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I think that even though it's not a porch, as we've discussed for zoning reasons, it faces the street, and I think the owner's point about the connection to the neighbors and the general kind of culture, I think is really important to be able to maintain. I think it would be bizarre to have no awning at all. I think the awning that exists is clearly detracting from understanding the character of the house itself. And so, yeah, I think it's a good argument, if not an easy one to evaluate from our usual guidelines. I think another point that is interesting that was brought up for the district designation earlier, we don't really talk a lot about, is that part of our purview is to promote good urban design, and I think having covered front porch spaces in neighborhoods like this is an example of good urban design.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing, that the existing awning is actually a detraction of the character of the existing house, and that the proposed covering is an improvement, not only because it's an improvement stylistically, but it reveals some of the character of the existing house that's now kind of concealed by the existing awning.
I think I agree with what most commissioners have talked about as far as this. I was struggling with, and I could understand why staff was struggling with it. I think I tended to focus most on design guideline 2.10D about not removing or adding features that change the architectural style of the building, and thinking of, we have these classical columns, but they are very minimal. And we do have the swag, knowing that we don't know for sure when things were added. However, it seems to be a little bit of a mishmash. We have more of like an arts and craft aesthetic with the tiles that we do see highlighted that weren't stuccoed over, although there's, clearly other tiles that were stuccoed over on the wall of the exterior wall of the house at the terrace. Anyways, all of which to say, it just added to my kind of back and forth. But in the end, I don't think the proposed terrace covering does change the architectural style of the building or confuse it any more than it already is in its way. So I would support the motion without the condition.
Okay. Haven't heard from Anne or Grant. Anything to say?
I don't know if I have a lot to add. Brittany's comment about the house across the street and down one, just looking at street view, you can start to draw a lot of similarities, maybe pre-stucco, right, if you're inferring. But I think to Gary's point, the fact that this more slender roof allows, the primary defining feature of the front facade is kind of that symmetry now. You have the chimney and the casement windows and the French doors, or the double hungs rather, but So I'm in favor of it for that reason too. I think it's reversible. If somebody were to make an argument in the future that an open terrace was a better idea, but I don't see that it's anything that would have a major long-lasting negative impact, you know? And I think that it's well justified based on the conversation we've had.
Okay, yeah.
No, I agree with fellow commissioners.
Okay. All right, then, okay, so it looks like we are headed in the direction of approving the terrace plan, correct? Do I hear a motion?
Can we pause for a second?
Certainly.
Consultation with our attorney. So this is about the administrative adjustment and we're not sure that the code says explicitly that you're not still a recommendation. Is that correct, Nate?
Yes, that's correct. So the section of the zoning code cited by staff talks about the zoning administrator approving the administrative adjustment if the commission finds, that the development conforming to the requirements of the code would have an adverse impact upon the historic character of the district or historic structure.
So it
So
would be a recommendation.
It's more of a recommendation to the zoning administrator if you can make that finding.
Okay. So the motion says approve, so it would be recommend approval. If you were gonna go with that, just an FYI, based on.
Recommend approval of
Based on
administrative.
consultation
I'm
with me.
confused. I thought we were the only method for which this could be approved. So but it's still the.
So you're the approving authority. Zoning administrator still has to sign off on the administrative adjustment. And that's how it's always been.
But in the motion, we have to say recommend approval of administrative adjustment.
Is that typical to all of the adjustments that we?
We were chatting about that. We probably need to make the code is going through some additional clarifications and probably need some additional clarifications.
Okay.
Based on our little chat that we were.
Okay, but for today, should we approve that as presented?
You're still
We
the
would
approving
recommend-
authority. It's just a nuance of saying approval versus recommend approval.
So we need to recommend approval today.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess, just going back one application, was that incorrect? Just, that was like half an hour ago, right?
Hence Larry's
Starting.
question.
We have been, so when the code went through changes to allow the commission to be the approving authority for all administrative adjustments in historic districts that are using criteria B, we were instructed by the zoning team that you guys are the approving authority and it needs to be approved. Nate is saying based on the way he is reading the code that you guys are still, it's not that things are necessarily wrong. They all still go, all administrative adjustments still go to the zoning administrator for final sign off.
If you
do we
want,
need to
Brittany
worry
can
about-
Put up the relevant code language
Yeah,
on the
I
screen.
have it, sorry.
That way we can sort of be clear on what the code says. Because the way it reads, right, the zoning administrator is the only body that has jurisdiction over zoning matters. This is an encroachment that can be administratively adjusted by the zoning administrator. You are the approving authority as it pertains to chapter 30 of the code. So when it comes to the landmark piece of this, you're the approving authority, but zoning still has to do its piece with respect to that encroachment.
Do we need to worry about the effectiveness of our last motion, or for the motion of the last project? Which also had an administrative adjustment that we approved, but didn't use this language that you're recommending now? Is
thank
that
you.
something we need to worry about?
That was, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily have to go back and redo it. I mean, you could. But the code and the language in the code, you see it here on the screen, is very deferential to the approving authority. So what it says is that the zoning administrator shall grant the administrative adjustment so long as you make the appropriate finding.
I don't know if you guys can see that.
So we have the de facto authority to make that approval.
Right.
Is that kind of what that's saying? I mean, if they shall grant an adjustment, our authority, chapter 30, is found it conforming. Would there ever be a condition where they wouldn't approve something we recommend
No.
for an adjustment?
That is what the code was updated and changed to. Again, you are the approving authority.
Yeah.
Every administrative adjustment has to be signed off by Tina
So-
Axelrod
So
essentially.
we're just talking about a matter of the correct language.
language,
Yeah.
So as
yes,
to not
the word.
disrespect Tina or the,
Right.
you know.
Well,
the
Tina
process,
and
the
her
due
team.
process. Yeah, yeah. But
Although,
I mean, it doesn't sound like there's
They
a
don't have-
risk of something that we approve or
No.
recommend being struck down by zoning authority.
It would not be.
I guess what I wonder is if we say recommend, does it start to put it in the same bucket as when we recommend forwarding of a national registered designation or something, which basically is, you know, a much lighter level of yeah, it's
Still
not
happens
approval.
though.
Yeah,
I mean, if we recommend an application go to the National Register, it still happens.
yeah.
I mean, you can just list, I'm not an attorney, but you can just list the step that's going to follow in future motions related to these administrative adjustments. You can just list the step that's gonna follow. I mean, it's just a half a sentence.
We
That
can say,
says-
we insist that the zoning.
Well, no, that, as per whatever, this will happen subsequent to approval by this body. It's easy to do. I mean, I don't,
If that's approved by our attorney.
but in the future, it's language you can come up with in a sentence.
We
that
can look
says
at it.
Exactly what it's gonna do.
We can look at it more in the future. The code is also, there's additional cleanups already proposed to this section that we're looking at right now, not just for the historic, this B section, this whole administrative adjustment section, which is it's affordable housing, disability, plans approved in error. There's cleanups proposed for this whole section. I just, it was brought to my attention that there was concerns and it's not that you guys are not the approving authority. That's not changing. You guys are still the approving authority for all administrative adjustments. And when you're using this criteria B, you used to only be able to approve height and bulk plane pretty much, but now you can do a wide swath of administrative adjustments.
Okay. So going back to today's task. Sorry about this. Making sausage isn't pretty, is it? Okay, so today's, we need to recommend approval. That's correct, Nate?
Correct.
All right. Clear as mud?
All right.
All right, commissioners, do I hear anyone brave enough to make a
Madam
motion?
Chair, I move
Gary.
to approve application number 2024-COA-114 for the portico alterations and terrace roof cover addition at 659 Vine Street as per design guidelines 2.10, 2.13, 2.37, 2.39, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.9, character defining features for the East Seventh Avenue Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report. I also move to recommend approval of the administrative adjustments for the front yard setback encroachment per section 12.4.5.2B for application 2024-COA-114 at 659 Vine Street as per design guidelines 2.39, character defining features for the East Seventh Avenue Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Gary. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Graham has seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right. Thank you very much, Nate. Brittany,
And we'll look into that zoning
congratulations.
code, thank you, for sure.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, you got to see the sausage being made.
That's all right, we just want to present you guys with the most confusing thing ever
Well
at the very
done.
end.
Well, you know, well done. I
Trust
think you
me.
did great work for the day.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do we have any business items?
We don't have any business or discussion items. We're just working continually on our design guideline updates. Some of you may know, unfortunately, we had to cancel our in-person meeting on the 27th and pivot to a virtual platform for our accessory dwelling unit meeting. However, I think it was still really successful. We had 75 people turn out for that meeting, so it was really great. And we are going to do an in-person meeting on March 20th. We're gonna be at the Studio Lofts, which is on the 4th floor of the Ellie Calkins Opera House. And that meeting will start at 6:30 and we'll start promptly on time, just to maximize the space. We are not doing the same content. We are gonna build a little bit on the last meeting that we held virtually on the 27th and some of the feedback we heard there. So it's not exactly the same content. So that's the date again, March 20th. It's a Wednesday, I believe, maybe a Tuesday.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? All right, I am closing the meeting. It's 3:05. Sorry, Erica.
No, it's
All right, everybody have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Julie.
Well, thank